This is Generation Stadia, here to give you your daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. And for today's topic, we'll be covering the Wired UK November issue that had an article dedicated to Google Stadia. Some very interesting information there that we never heard of before. So let's dive right into it, and let us start with some of the more exciting info that was included. In this case, we're going to be talking about a prototype game that's being worked on. But before that, let's give a quick background on who's working on these projects at Google, because now we have two names involved. The first being Jade Raymond. She was announced to be partnering with Google Stadia way back when it was first announced. Frankly speaking, she's a very reputable name to have. She's worked on some very big projects in the video game industry. She was in charge of developing Assassin's Creed for Ubisoft, as well as multiple Star Wars games for EA, along with The Sims Online. Jade Raymond is in charge of creating a publishing team over at Google Stadia that's in charge of creating exclusive deals with third-party developers. And her job doesn't end there, she's also in charge of building up an internal studio just for Google Stadia. But before we dive into all that, let's first talk about the other big name involved. And that's Erin Hoffman John. She has a lot of experience in multiple types of genres as well as multiple types of platforms. Her position at Google is about running Star Labs, a future-focused development studio to see what Stadia can really do. The studio is fully focused on creating prototypes to see what Stadia is capable of in the future. And in the Wired UK article, we actually got a quick description of what they're currently working on. The article describes it as a dragon world, an immersive wilderness where you find a dragon egg, see it hatch, raise the dragon, and make it recognize your voice. You have to feed it and take care of it, much like Pokemon. But you can also ride it, fight other players, form groups and guilds, and carve out your own territory. Now obviously these are all prototypes and none of them are guaranteed to come out. That being said, the idea of being able to have a Pokemon-like battle and actually use my voice to integrate it and be recognized by the game, that's always been a bit of a childhood dream. Not to mention, Erin herself actually has quite a bit of a background in D&D and MMO development, and when you start taking that all into account, you could really just begin to imagine how awesome it would be to have a Pokemon-like MMO game full of players and a huge world to explore together. Now hold on to that MMO bit, because we'll be talking about it later in this video, but first, let's go back to Jade Raymond and see what she's up to. So as I stated earlier, she's in charge of creating a publishing team that's able to work with external developers to make exclusive content for Stadia. On top of that, she's also building Google Stadia's own internal studio. Now we've known for a while that she's been working on an internal Google Stadia studio, but we still have very little ideas or hints to what they may be working on. With that said, the publishing team trying to get exclusive Stadia content from third-party developers is a very interesting detail. So far, we've seen already a few deals with Guild, Get Packed, and Orcs Must Die 3, but I'm very curious to see how many more deals are to come. And before we continue on to the next news piece, I want to pass on the question to you. This is the current list of third-party developers and publishers currently supporting Google Stadia. If you could choose any of these teams to develop a third-party exclusive for Stadia, what company would it be and what type of game would you want from them? For me, that team would be Rockstar, and I would love for them to just keep doing what they do best and create the best open world game that they can. Now the next interesting bit of information we got from the Wired UK article is how Stadia can really benefit MMOs in general. In the example they gave in the article, they're talking about Neverwinter and World of Warcraft and the technique known as shards. So if you want the quick rundown on shards, basically it separates player bases into different instances, think parallel universes, to prevent issues like lag and other performance downfalls. This is why you'll see many servers have around 53,000 people, but sometimes you'll be left with a world that feels emptier than it should be. The only MMO that can get away without the use of shards is EVE Online, and that's because of its slow gameplay. That's why every now and then you'll get a news article talking about thousands and thousands of players battling it out in EVE Online during an event. With that said, playing games that are fast and frantic just isn't possible. At least not until now. As the article states, Stadia is capable of running thousands and thousands of players in a fast and frantic game like Fortnite if desired. That's the type of potential that Stadia can bring to the table, and that's only because of how scalable the servers are. Now, to be very fair, I'd much rather they show us than tell us, but Google has been very adamant about throwing huge player counts at us, and I expect them to be working on something that shows that. I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on some type of MMO. In fact, I think that's probably the best guess judging on what they've been talking about so far. Now, I'm not a big MMO person myself, but if you can provide an MMO-like world with fast and frantic gameplay like any action game, while I'm not sure about you, I know I would be totally down for that. But fast and frantic gameplay is only fast when the input button lag and latency is low. So how does Google plan to manage that? Well, they talk about it in this article. As you know, sites like YouTube and Netflix use a buffer to load a video, and for a viewing experience that works perfectly fine, but in a gameplay perspective, that just can't happen. There's no time whatsoever to buffer or load your video game while you're playing. That would really cause some huge disruption. So what's Google's answer to this? Well, back in 2010, they actually bought a company that works on encoding video. That company being On2 Technologies. This company's been working on making encoders for most of its days, and they're up to VP9, which is the encoder Stadia will be using. Now, the VP9 codec is open to use, but in Google Stadia's case, I think John Justice put it best when he said, the VP9 codec is open, but in Stadia's case, we do special work on the encoder that makes it super fast. That encoder still follows the VP9 standard format, so every VP9 decoder out there can read the streams. But our encoder is specially optimized, making it much faster. We put a lot of special sauce in there. So what this really comes down to is the fact that Google has heavily modified that VP9 codec specifically for Stadia. It seems like it's going to be responsible for the low latency gameplay as well as the high resolution image Google Stadia is promising. Obviously, this all sounds really promising, and it's exciting to hear that Google's been so invested in improving that sort of interactivity, but I can't wait to see it for myself come November. As someone who's tried pretty much every streaming service out there right now, I am really curious to see if it's really that much improved. You can definitely expect an in-depth review as well as a comparison to the many other services once it's out. The next bit of news I want to discuss from the article is one that I find very fascinating, and that's the use of machine learning. It goes on to talk about how machine learning can be used to develop games in an all-new way and improve efficiency. In the article, they compare creating a character with 8,000 animations for the same price of creating a character with 15. They really emphasize just how much faster the development process can be used when machine learning comes into play. The next example when talking about this is creating an AI and just telling it what it likes and what it doesn't like. Based on the criteria you feed the AI, it will then create the dialogue tree all on its own. Not only that, but the AI will have a simple memory, so it can actually recall when you last talked to it and the conversation you had. As you can imagine, this would heavily reduce development cost and speed up the process in making background characters. While I don't think this sort of feature would function well when you're writing a main character that's heavily emphasized in the story, I do see it creating a lot of more interesting NPCs. This machine learning and AI stuff always seems to fascinate me because it just sounds so out there and different. With that said, we do have a good example of how it works, and if you want to see it, click on the annotation above, as Microsoft Flight Simulator is already using some of that machine learning technology. Truth is that we're in a very interesting position, and technology is advancing so fast it's even hard to keep up with it. But I have to admit, that's what makes it so exciting, that we're at the forefront of a lot of innovation in the video game industry. Whether all the stuff that Google talked about in this Wired article works as planned, or it doesn't, the fact is that these are things that are being built right now. I can't even begin to imagine what the gaming landscape will look 5, 10, or even 20 years from now. Now, this Wired article is a really good read, and I suggest you go check it out. I'll put a link in the description below for you to go see it. There's still a couple of things that I want to talk about that are stated in this article, but I think warrant their own full video, so expect to hear about them soon. One being how Google thinks that Stadia and cloud gaming in general will push the technology that is 5G forward, and the other about how Google plans to use YouTube to its advantage, as well as using the whole entire Google ecosystem. If this article has made one thing clear, is that Google is in this and they've been invested in this for the longest time. And that sums up today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out in a big way, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Now, this end of video message for those who stay is a huge deal for me, and frankly speaking, I'm very unprepared for it. About a day ago, we passed 1,000 subscribers, and I just think that's such a huge deal, and I actually had things planned for it, and frankly speaking, I'm just so unprepared because it came by so fast. I started this channel about a month and a week ago now, and back then, I never imagined I would be hitting 1,000 subscribers even in November when Stadia launched. Let alone October, the month before. That just completely blows my mind how big and strong this Gen S community has gotten over the past month. And it's not just the YouTube channel that's grown, our community Discord has over 100 members now. And if I'm being honest, it makes me happy to see all the conversations that go on each and every day. In fact, we already have members playing games with one another, and that's what this was about. When I started this channel, I planned on doing things like news and reviews, but I also had the hopes of creating discussion topics to really get a community involved. We're at the start of a brand new gaming platform, and it just happens to be that it gets a lot of criticism and hate for all the innovation it's trying to bring into the industry. My intention with Generation Stadia is to foster a healthy community that promotes discussion, be it good or bad on Stadia. Believe me, if Stadia doesn't work up to par come November, I will be brutally honest about the service. But until then, I think it's wrong to start disregarding it and thinking it's gonna fail when it hasn't even had a chance to start. And judging by all the YouTube comments in every single video and all the discussion that happens in our community Discord, I know I'm not alone in this. With all that said, I just want to give a huge thank you to the Generation Stadia community. I wish I could express in words just how grateful I am. And believe me when I say this is a community I'm more than proud to be a part of. We are more than 1,000 strong now, and this is just the beginning of what's to come. On a side note, I'm still working on the things that I had planned to celebrate for 1,000 subscribers. They're just gonna be coming a little bit later than I had hoped. I hope you look forward to that, but until then, this has been Generation Stadia, giving you your daily dose of everything and anything Stadia related. We are now officially 1,000 strong, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds. Peace.